AskReddit by Dawn Cyborgs. What you know what? Just to be safe thing you did end up saving your ass later. I was at a sleepover as a kid. I was a little worried because my mom had been oddly tired earlier that day. I went home early because I was worried. By the end of the night I, 14 at the time, had to call an ambulance for my mom, as she was having problems with her heart and I was the only one there with her. She was incapable of forming coherent sentences and would probably not have gotten the help she needed if I wasn't there. So, good thing I was. Learned CPR and first aid. Had to give CPR to a family friend when she collapsed from a heart attack and thankfully she was brought back after being down for 15 minutes. She only had minor memory problems and mostly just couldn't remember that day. She's still here and kicking years later. I did this too. Learned CPR when I was pregnant. Seemed like a smart thing to do. A couple months later, my hugely pregnant ass successfully performed the Heimlich on a colleague. Was delivering pizza in a sketchy block of town late at night. Huge apartment complex with multiple buildings. Walking up to the front door I noticed a couple guys wearing dark clothing about 100 feet behind me walking in my direction. Delivery was on the second floor and by the time I reached her door I heard the main door of the apartment complex open and close. She used a CC for the order and tipped in cash, so when I was putting the receipt into my bag, where I kept my cash, I actually pulled the rest of the cash out and stuffed it into my inner jacket pocket just to be safe, leaving just the change I had that night in the bag. Started to head down the stairs back out to my car and two guys jumped out from behind the stairs and the one had a gun pointed at me and told me to give them the money. I quickly handed them my bag filled with quarters and they took off towards the back entrance. I used to be a shift manager at a pizza place and I refused to send my drivers to certain areas at dusk night because of this. I'm just glad you made it out safely. Was on a side-by-side vehicle mudding on some property a friend and I were visiting. Mid-ride, I turn to my friend and say, hey, you should probably buckle your seatbelt. Just in case. Not 1 minute later did he lose control and slide front first into a tree, going about as fast as this thing could go given the conditions. Both of us were okay but the side-by-side was completely ruined. He looked at me right after and his eyes were as big as dinner plates. What is a side-by-side? All I can picture is a motorcycle with a sidecar. I dropped my high school girlfriend off, then for some reason I locked the passenger door. Not 10 minutes later I was stopped at a red light and some scummy looking dude tried to open up the door. I have no idea why I locked that door after she got out. I really didn't have a habit of that. No idea what would have happened if that guy got in my truck. Something similar happened to me. I was dropping my friend off at home. He lived in a sketchy neighborhood. I had my driver's side door locked and as soon as he got out I immediately locked the other one. These three girls come running out of the bushes trying to open my car doors. One jumped on my hood and I fucking gunned it. She rolled off my car. The other chucked her drink at my driver's side door. I'm terrified to think about what they were going to do to me. Driving along highway and get a bad feeling with drivers ahead of me tailgating back to back at 70 miles per hour. I switch lanes to be safe and get further clearance. Not 2 seconds later one of the cars ahead slams on their brakes, looked like no fucking reason, and the cars in my previous lane slam into each other, and one car that was behind me slams into all of them full blast. Cars go flying into the air Hollywood style, flipping up nearly vertical before slamming back down. I'd probably be dead or have a lifelong disability if I hadn't moved. Avoid dumb drivers, kids. Keep safe distances and buffers whenever possible. My dad lost his glasses once. He was going to just use his old prescription but last minute decided to just go to the optometrist anyway in case something changed. Turns out he had a tear in his retina and was booked for surgery within 24 hours. It was bad enough they said he probably would have gone blind really soon had they not caught it when then did. How did he get a tear in his retina? Also, I'm glad he's okay. My stomach had some issues and my doctor sent me for a colonoscopy just to get things checked out. They found one polyp, no big deal, not related to the current problem, and told me to come back in 5 years just in case. I put a Google reminder and forgot about it. 5 years later, I went for the colonoscopy and they found a lot more and said I would have ended up with cancer in 5-20 years for sure had I not gone. Instead, they removed all polyps and now I'm regularly going to colonoscopies due to having a syndrome they identified. I'm far away from the age where you normally get a colonoscopy, so I would definitely have got cancer. When you are eligible or if it is recommended, get a colonoscopy. Very similar situation to you, my syndrome has a potential genetic link, so I've sent my siblings and mother off to get scoped too. It took 7 years to get diagnosed though. Anyone reading this who has weird ongoing issues, get a scope. I'm watching my father wither away thanks to completely treatable bowel cancer had it been caught earlier. $5 breakage insurance on a rental surfboard. Broke that fucker clean in half in my first 10 minutes. I wonder if it was a ploy by the rental business knowing their boards were liable to break and therefore make more money on customers without insurance. Not my ass, but I was getting ready for school whilst mum was vomiting in the bathroom. She said it was just a stomach bug and to just go to school, but mentioned her arm hurt. Something didn't sit right, so I called the ambulance from downstairs. They arrived and took her into the ambulance. She then proceeded to have 3 cardiac arrests and needed defibrillated each time. A double bypass later and she was up and about within a month. Paramedics told me she would have died 5 minutes after I left, if I hadn't called. You saved your mom. Smart listening to your intuition. Snow chains at the bottom of the mountain. A bunch of cars passed me on a clear road on the way up with several warnings all the way up. I saw a local throwing on chains with no snow in the area. I decided to be safe and put them on. 30 minutes later I was in one of the worst snow driving conditions I've ever seen. Whiteout conditions in a snowstorm that eventually resulted in the complete shutdown of the roads. I passed car crash after car crash with just enough traction to feel somewhat comfortable moving 15 miles an hour. Anyone heading to Tahoe needs chains and chains that fit. Don't fuck around. I don't care if you have a 4-wheel drive. Driving through Tahoe and Mammoth during snowstorms is no joke. Literally sunny with no clouds to blinding white darkness in an hour. Edit. One more thing. If you find yourself near Heavenly and Siri sends you to a snowed over hill that feels too steep, turn around. Unless you have the right setup you aren't gonna make it. Snow chains or not, you will slide. Just take the Harrah's gondola if it's that bad. If you don't already have your own gear, try another resort. Heavenly is uniquely bad for rentals and beginners in general. If a local that is used to driving in the snow is putting on chains, you know that shit is going to be bad. Might sound ridiculous, but many years ago when I did my mandatory community service, was a thing in Germany as a counterpart to mandatory military service. There was a particular day in a pretty harsh winter. I usually went to work with my bike, as the streets were cleared of snow and ice anyway. At this day, I didn't take my helmet off because when I arrived at the place I worked I immediately started to shovel snow and didn't even walk inside first. My workplace was a huge and old 4-story hostel in the woods. The roof was packed with snow and there were massive icicles hanging from the gutters. When a coworker asked me why I decided to look like an idiot with my helmet on, I jokingly replied it was for serious security reasons. A few moments later an icicle block fell down and hit me on the head and the shoulders. The impact was so brutal that it made me fall down on my knees. Shoulders were bruised but my head was fine. I really don't know what could have happened if I didn't wear my stupid bicycle helmet for fun that morning. Serious injury for sure. Someone from my family was killed by an icicle to the throat. Had some weird achy symptoms and went to the doctor even though I figured I was probably overreacting. Turns out I had cancer. My problem is I'm almost always aching somewhere. One day I was attempting to make karaoke for the first time, a kind of Filipino fried mochi, and after I popped them in the oil, I settled in and watched them carefully. I never wear an apron whilst cooking, but for some reason I figured why not this time, and as soon as I stepped out of range of the fryer, they all exploded. Turns out, karaoke can form an impermeable shell when fried, so pressure built up inside until they popped and sprayed hot oil all over the kitchen. Of course, I was safely away reaching for an apron and was completely dumbfounded. Made sure to punch some holes in all subsequent batches. Of course, once I cleaned the kitchen, I ate them and they were delicious. 10/10 highly recommend. Edit. For the curious, https://panlasangpinoy.com/karaoke-recipe/right square bracket open bracket https://panlasangpinoy.com karaoke recipe. Pro tip: don't let them explode. Everything tastes nicer after it tries to kill you. Was watching my toddler nephew and he'd found a metal straw somewhere in the house and started playing with it. He was just tapping stuff and waving it around, but I'd just read a story on Reddit about a woman who got completely fucked up by a metal straw when she fell and it impaled her face. So I took the metal one from nephew and gave him a soft, squishy silicone one to play with instead. I'm not exaggerating when I say less than 5 minutes later, he fell like toddlers do and I saw the silicone straw all smushed into his cheek. I had to just sit for a while after that, lol. I have an irrational fear of getting stabbed in the eye with a straw. I'm cautious with fast food straws in the car. Whoever invented the steel straws is a psychopath. I spent $25 on a set of silicone straws and I use them every day without fear. I once subcultured a master culture which was used in a very important research study. We were specifically told not to do that because of patent liabilities. But still I had a gut feeling that we were going to need another plate cultured. And lo and behold, a student accidentally dropped the plate in a lab and it shattered. Saved us 6 months of time and penalties. I have no idea what cultures and subcultures are in this context, but I know what 6 months of work are. So good for you. Leaving a spare set of keys at the pub that I live above. Went out on St. Patrick's Day and had my coat stolen. I keep my keys in my coat. At 3 in the morning, I had genuinely no idea how I would have been able to get home otherwise. Definitely not some big life-saving moment or anything, but it was a relief, lol. I keep a spare car key at work. While I have never needed it at the end of my shift, there have been a couple of times that I have been in town. I live an hour outside, for something else, and managed to lock my keys in. It was the difference between a 10-minute cab ride, or a city bus, and a 2-hour cab ride. Filling up my ridiculously large 2.5 liter water bottle yesterday, a pipe burst in my building last night and we still don't have running water 20 hours later, but I still have my bottle. Make sure you have an emergency supply of water in your house. My husband would fill up plastic milk jugs of water, and I would give him a little bit of a hard time. Until we had a pipe burst and had to turn off the water. We couldn't get someone out for a few days. Because he had the water, we could still shit and piss in the toilet and had water to cook and drink. He doesn't do it much anymore, so it might have been some M. Night Shyamalan science shit. Grabbed a helmet when riding a bike down a steep hill as a kid. Normally didn't, but I ended up falling at top speed and breaking my helmet and chipping 3 teeth. Could have been my head that was broken. Oh, I did the same, except instead of eating dirt, there was a cut coming up the bottom of the hill around a blind curve. I was 11. Unsure whether or not my family is better off with me having made that choice, given a bunch of cascading effects, but I guess being alive is kinda nice. Wear your helmets. I had gallbladder pain on and off. One day I decided I should get it checked. GP gave me antacids and sent me for an US just in case. No gallstones, but they found a 4 centimeter tumor on my left kidney. Cancer. Got the kidney whipped out. No metastases. Just hit 14 years car free and I still have gallbladder pain on and off. Thanks to my GP for listening. During a hurricane, I realized the street was flooding, so I figured I should move my car farther up the driveway. On my way out, I had the sudden urge to poop, so just to be safe, I stopped by the bathroom first. Maybe 30 seconds later, boom. Neighbor's tree fell directly on my car, crushing it. https://imgur.com/a/mezak5r close bracket. That shit saved your life. Worked alone in a gambling video poker place. Closing. Strange guy came in and started making small talk with me. I was expected to be kind and friendly to everybody who came in, so I was doing that. I decided to send a message to my boyfriend and a friend, and then something in me told me to take a picture of the guy as he moved closer to the counter I was behind. I snuck one real quick and sent it to said friend since she was awake. She called me immediately as she drove the 20 minutes to my job. An hour before I got off. I lied. I didn't drive, so I had no vehicle in the now abandoned parking lot, the only car being his, which was conveniently backed in, right next to front door. 2 days later there was a missing persons report released of someone who was a very familiar build and features that I haven't suspected trafficking in the area. She went missing later that same night. He left after my friend showed up. I've never had such an uneasy feeling in my life, and I truly think sending those messages are what saved my life. He was waiting for me to get off work at 1 AM. Our eyes were right on the front door. Did you go tell the cops and show the picture? As a teenager, a friend of mine managed to lift a set of keys to a new car on a dealership lot. We were all super excited to go there that night and take that new car for a spin. At the last moment I thought of how disappointed my mom would be and backed out. That night, during the joyride, they got into a high-speed chase with a couple of cop cars, took an intersection at 85 miles per hour against traffic, and were spun into a brick wall after an initial collision with a garbage truck.